Hello everyone, this is Michael, host of the Pound for Pound Box Report. You're getting ready to listen to episode 245. Episode 245 was originally recorded Friday, March the 22nd. It's just dropping now because I've been so busy that there's been a delay in me dropping the original recording. So you're wondering, why are we talking about Spence Garcia now? Why are we talking about Tevin Farmer and Katie Taylor and the developments regarding Deontay Wilder? Why are they waiting so long to talk about it? It's because I've been late dropping the recording, so my apologies for that. Anyway, here's episode 245 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, where we discuss all things boxing. Hope you enjoy.
You are now listening to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, where you hear all things boxing.
Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 245. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, as well as Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, we swam through shark-infested waters to get to you tonight, folks.
Yeah, and in case you, for those who are on YouTube, different format because having issues with Hangout all week long. This recording is being done via Skype, and I just used the Skype recording and put it on the YouTube channel. So same thing with for those who may be listening via SoundCloud, iTunes, or whatever. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. And technology-wise, it has been bad. Bottom line is, when it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out any and all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, blog page is the place to go to. b4pboxingreport.wordpress.com is the link. You check the right of the blog page. You'll find links to where to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over social media, as well as to where to find the podcast on all available platforms, including Spotify. We're now on Spotify now. And we do have a donate button, a couple of donate buttons. Let donation be the best nation. Got a Cash Me donate button, as well as a PayPal donate button on the blog page. So please, 50 cents, $1, $2, $5, $10. If you want to go big, by all means, whatever pocket change you can spare that you have free on your hand. Let's get things started. Recapping what went down last week. I mean, this is Friday, March 22nd, so we got a lot to talk about. Let's start in Texas, recapping the big pay-per-view card that took place. The main event of that, of course, was Errol Spence Jr. defending his IBF title against Mikey Garcia, moving up 2 weights to challenge Spence for his welterweight title. Spence winning by unanimous 12-round decision. And I'll go to you, Gail. For me, when we previewed this fight last week, my big thing was, if Spence could establish the jab, if he can get off with the jab, if he could be first with the jab and stay consistent with the jab, how was Mikey Garcia going to find a way to get to him with shots? I know that Garcia is talented, he's skilled, but I questioned his footwork and athleticism, something that you need to get to the likes of an Errol Spence. And the fight went, particularly the first 2/3 of the fight, went pretty much that way. Spence found the jab early and often, and though trying hard, Mikey Garcia just couldn't get there with the punches through the first 2/3 of the fight. You saw what happened in round 9 when Spence really beat up Garcia. But Spence dominated, and he dominated not by coming in brawling, not by being a bully, but in my opinion, Gail, by boxing.
Absolutely. For people who think the outcome of this fight was because a big man beat up on a little man, they weren't watching closely enough. It had nothing to do with size. If Spence had wanted to crowd Garcia, lean on him, use the forearms, all of the tricks we've seen of the trade a million times, he certainly could have done so. He didn't. He didn't do any of those things. He was simply a far better ring general. He was far better landing his shots. His command of distance was perfect. And he took advantage of a Garcia who, for whatever reason, after the one round where I did give it to him, the second round where he seemed to be gaining some traction, from there on he couldn't pull the trigger.
Your thoughts on the fight, Daniel?
Well, when I looked at the fight, and I know we had the thoughts on it when we did the pod immediately afterwards, my initial thoughts were that I could see how people thought that Mikey was in the fight within the first half of it, and then Spence started to attack the body really well and pretty much stopped any real momentum that Mikey had. And I'll give him a chance. He has a chin. I know people are right now trying to dog walk a little bit Spence because he didn't flat out destroy Mikey. But at the end of the day, he did it in the fact that he didn't do it that way, the fact that he boxed, shows you that he is a lot more versatile than people can give him credit for. And the only thing that's probably going to be a factor into it in the future is Mikey did have success a bit with his right hands in the first half of the fight. He was able to start landing them at a certain point. But Spence made the right adjustment to focus on the jab and focus on the body attack. Pretty much making sure that Mikey never really got the ball rolling as far as countering what he wanted to do.
I'll go to both of you on this one. Your thoughts on the reaction to the fight afterwards. I've heard Spence did what he was supposed to do, and he did a good job, and he surprised many by his boxing skill, by displaying his boxing skill on the night. But I've also heard folks complain essentially that because the fight with the distance, that this is an indictment on one Errol Spence. Oh, Mikey made him back up at times. Oh, he couldn't knock him out. He really didn't hurt Mikey. They've used this. They've used that rationale, those reasonings as a way to condemn and criticize Spence and his performance. Your thoughts on that?
It seems awfully short-sighted to me to accept an outcome that is only black and white. Either you give a guy a beat down or you're the one that takes the beat down. There's a lot of in between. There's a lot of sophistication to what Spence did. Spence was like a cat toying with a mouse at one point of the fight. I mean, it just became clear he was in complete command. I could argue easily that is a far greater show of skill than a guy who can just bludgeon you with one punch. Anybody can get lucky enough to do that. We've seen a lot of lesser fighters once or twice in their career. You know, the first name that pops into my head is Andy Lee. Andy Lee is not a particularly skilled technical fighter, but he's had some crazy one-punch knockout fights. Does that make him a great fighter? No, hell no. So they need to look past that. But it takes some sophistication on the part of the fan and the viewer to recognize that skill set. So for those people upset with this performance, that says a lot more about them than it does about Errol Spence.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
This is the tricky part into it because, he, like I mentioned, he showed that Spence had skill. He showed that he's more versatile than just trying to be a knockout artist in a way. Like the problem is, and this is what I was bringing up when we talked about the last week before the pod, and like when me and Wachini got a little bit into it. This is a situation that I fear when I looked into it, that Spence really had nothing to gain from this. And the reaction told me before after fight, and some of it that's still happening, tells me that despite how he won, despite the fact that he really made a guy that is considered a lot of people, at least in the top 10 discussion for pound, and Mikey Garcia, and just outbox him, he didn't gain anything from it. Well, we'll know what the pay-per-view rights are going to be fairly soon, so we'll see how much of an impact the fight had. But by the reaction that I see, yeah, I feel really bad in the sense because it looks like he's gained nothing from it. But then also in a way, Mikey didn't gain anything from it either.
Well, I will argue there was something to be gained, and that Spence did gain. Spence and Garcia, and perhaps some of the undercard guys, put 47,000 Americans, and I imagine a few Mexicans and Mexican Americans in the seats. That is an accomplishment in American boxing today. That shows that there's an appetite for boxing beyond LA and New York and Las Vegas, and that Errol Spence can, in a compelling enough matchup, put people in the seats. That is a positive. That's good news, and that is a win for him.
So let's talk future here. Manny Pacquiao, he was in attendance. They brought him up during ringside. They talked of a possible Spence Pacquiao fight later on this year. And while Spence was, yeah, let's do it, Pacquiao said, yeah, but in my opinion, did he really mean it? Thoughts on a potential fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Manny Pacquiao next, Daniel, or is that just talk on their behalf and they're just going to go another route?
I'm going to jump in as our man has his mic muted. I really don't want to see it. I really don't. I don't think I want to see it next, at least. I get it. Pacquiao's kind of killing time down to the end of his career. But I'm not sure that's the matchup I want to see next. I think I'd much rather see either of them against Keith Thurman at this point, and see what happens. And that also gives you a little bit of a measuring stick as to where they both are now, if they both take on a mutual opponent. So I think that's the better way to go. But, we don't get a say, so I wouldn't be horribly surprised if it happens. And to the point I just made about Spence being able to put butts in the seats, well, we know Pacquiao's also been able to put butts in the seats there in Texas. So that's a pretty big draw, and it just might be too tempting to ignore.
I think Daniel is back. So I'll go back to you with the question, Daniel. Pacquiao was in attendance. They brought him to ringside. Both talked about possibly fighting each other later on this year. I think Errol Spence is all for it, but Pacquiao just reading his tone, or just listening to his tone and reading his body language. I'm not so sure. Your thoughts, Daniel, on a potential fight between Spence and Pacquiao this year, or do you think that was just show on their part?
I think at the beginning, it looked like it was going to be a real thing because Manny doesn't just go into the ring and try to make a fight, and you can tell pretty much like by this being the first PBC/Forks Fox pay-per-view, they're already looking to Spence to be that mantle for being a pay-per-view star. I don't think it's happening though, because I think at some point Manny's people are going to look into it and they'll see that if they look at the same situation that they did with Bud, and we know Manny's team wanted no part of Bud Crawford. And they're going to look at it and say, it's going to be the same thing with Spence. And they're going to see, okay, he boxes well, but he can hit. He may be out quick, but he may be too big for him. Eventually, I think they are going to lean towards... They're going to lean towards Manny's team probably enforcing their mandatory with Thurman. Because that's an easier fight for Manny to win.
Oh, and let's remember how Thurman looked in his last fight. Not exactly a world beater. He was in trouble multiple times in that last fight. So if I'm Pacquiao, I think, if I'm ever going to go after Keith Thurman, now's the time.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I just don't see, despite that show that we saw after the fight, I just don't think that we will see a Spence Pacquiao fight next. I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know who Pacquiao will, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Pacquiao fight Thurman instead, and Spence will fight someone like a Porter. Who knows? But the fight that I don't think we will see, Pacquiao Spence. Pacquiao may want it for more financial reasons, but if he was just a smart dude, no, that's a wrong move for him. Yeah. But it was a wrong move because of his size and just speed and skill. I just think that Spence, in spite of what some folks were saying afterwards, if he boxes like that, coupled with his size and power, I kind of fear. Well, I would worry for Manny Pacquiao. I would worry for Manny Pacquiao. Just too big and too strong. Let's move on. More fights on that card. And because we started so late, this recording, I'm gonna split these fights up. Going to you first, Gail. David Benavidez, he's been off for 13 months due to a positive test for cocaine. Subsequently stripped of his WBC title, currently held by Anthony Durrell. Well, Benavidez finally returned to the ring on the undercard of Spence, Mikey Garcia in Arlington at Jerry's World. Fought Jillian Love, made easy work of Love, stopped him in 2 rounds. To me, call me conspiratorial, but to me, TMT, they threw Jillian Love out to pasture. They made him food, much in the same way that Golden Boy made Saddam Ali food for Jaime Munguia. You could see this fight happen. You could see this result happening a mile away. So briefly talk about the fight, Gail, but more importantly, talked about David Benavidez and the emotion he showed afterwards. They asked him about Caleb Plant and whatnot, but David Benavidez made it perfectly clear he wants his WBC title back. And to emphasize it, he pointed out Anthony Durrell and said, "I'm coming for you."
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want fighters to do. I mean, it's clearly a fight that needs to be in the works. Then Benavidez, was highly embarrassed by failing drug test. He was on the rise, looking great. That test cost him big. He is a young man. He has been fairly candid about the mistakes he's made, having his belt stripped for it. And it's made him hungrier. It's made him angrier. And in a lot of sports, angry would be a problem. Boxing, not a problem. It only makes him more dangerous. And he did what he needed to do in this fight. He needed to come out big, bold, make a statement. Yeah, poor Jay Leon, man. And he didn't help himself by fanning the flames during all the lead up to the fight, taunting Benavidez and so on. He did get thrown to the wolves. He really did. So the storyline is moving along as it should, somewhat as expected. Be interesting to see that fight negotiated and what card it ends up on. It's not a main event necessarily on a big card, but if they wanted to go to a smaller venue and be the big dogs in the room, they could. Particularly if they were willing to hold that fight, say, and this would, this would be very interesting. Darrell it's an interesting challenge from a matchmaking perspective, because Benavidez is probably the guy who puts more people in the seats and who, except on paper, is the A side. But Darrell has the belt, so he's the A side. So let's say you want to put the fight somewhere regionally. So where do you go? You put it at home for Darrell, or do you put it at home for Benavidez?
Doesn't matter.
Don't think so?
No, it doesn't matter, because Benavidez is going to beat up Darrell wherever they have.
That's anyway. Well, I do too. But the question is not necessarily the outcome in the ring, but where is the fight going to be a bigger draw, and where are they going to generate more interest, more excitement, sell more tickets, and make more money? I would frankly argue it's in Phoenix for Benavidez, but you could easily put it up north, and we'll see what happens. I understand negotiations are underway right now, so we may find out fairly soon. And making the fight quickly is a huge positive, in my opinion. Benavidez, he didn't spend much time in the ring, so there's no reason he can't get a fight again in just a couple of months.
I'll go to you, Daniel, for this next fight. Over the past couple of years, Luis Nery, there's been a huge question mark regarding him. Not so much of his ability, but so much of the stuff that's happened outside the ring with him. When he won the title against Yamanaka, failed a drug test, pre-fight drug test. They fought again, and then the saga with him coming in so heavy, didn't make weight. He looked dead at the weigh-in, but by the time he got in the ring to face Yamanaka for the rematch, he destroyed him. He's been a lightning rod in a negative sense post that. Was suspended he was suspended. Folks have not seen him, but he finally got his an opportunity to be center stage, if you will, or at least part of a big card. And as he fought McJoe Arroyo, 115-pound champion, and given the opportunity, Nery took advantage of it in full, knocked McJoe Arroyo down multiple times, stopped him, I think it was in the fifth. Say what you want about Nery as far as him being a controversial figure. Inside the ring, he can fight, and he can fight damn well. And he put himself right back in the bantamweight landscape with this fight, Daniel.
In more ways than one, because this is one of those same fights. Same thing like Benavidez, where it became academic in the first round. Now, I'm not going to disregard anything McJoe Arroyo does. He's a very good fighter at flyweight and super flyweight. You can argue he may be the better of him and his twin brother in a way when it comes to the higher weight classes, but this was just too big. This was just Nery was too big, too skilled, too strong, and even though he technically didn't get a knockdown in the first round, it was just a domination throughout the fight. Second round, you have a knockdown. Third round, you had a knockdown. In the fourth, when they finally stopped it, you had two. So Nery's showing that he wants this. Like, he wants to get back into the title picture because he has to redeem himself in a way. He does have to. Because there's a lot of bad blood, unfortunately, that he put in the window when he kind of did what he did to Yamanaka, both in the weight and in just how everything happened. But he's so skilled in the way, and he's very aggressive in a way where he may actually want to go after guys like Tete, go after guys like Inoue. Inoue is going to be the interesting one because you would think that fight would happen in Japan, but I don't think they're going to let Nery back in Japan. But Tete would probably be the most interesting one to me because he's fallen into that Zurdo Ramirez hole where they haven't looked good against competition that they should look good against. And maybe Tete does need somebody like that who will give him a really good fight in Nery to come into it. But hey, welcome back, Pantera.
Yeah, if I'm Luis Nery, I'm going after the WBC title held by Obali, I believe it is, and then hopefully win that and call out the winner of the World Boxing Super Series Bantamweight tournament. Whoever it is, whether it's Inoue, whether it's Tete, whether it's Manny Rodriguez, Donaire, the winner of that, say I'm here and I'm willing to fight you. That's what I would do, because the other bantamweights are tied up in the moment. He's going to be fighting in this summer, I want to say July. Nery, see if he can get Obali in the ring with him in July, and then from there, wait to the winner of the World Boxing Super Series. Say that whoever wins, let's get it on. Going back to you, Daniel, while Spence, Garcia, and that card got all of the attention last week on Saturday, there was also a fight that took place in Japan. Pretty anticipated fight if you're a fan of the smaller weights. Kosei Tanaka, for those who watched him, very impressed by him, defending his WBO belt at 112 pounds, fighting former 108-pound champion Ryoichi Taguchi. Tanaka won. He was stunned in the third round by way of right hand, but if you saw the fight, Daniel, from round 4 on, Tanaka was highly impressive. Beat Taguchi up to the point where Taguchi was on the verge of literal physical collapse after the fight. If you were able to see the fight, Daniel, your reaction to what Tanaka did to Taguchi?
It's almost a similar story to what we saw with Spence and Garcia, because that right hand that Taguchi landed, if you notice the crowd and notice how the reaction was as the fight happened, it shook people up a little bit. Like, wait a minute, can Taguchi do this? Like, he hurt him. Can he do this? Can he come into it and beat Tanaka in this? And then Tanaka, like Spence did, just decided to just attack the body with ruthless aggression. And I have to give it to Taguchi that lesser men would not have survived that body attack that Tanaka launched on him. The fact that he didn't collapse after the fight is a testament to his toughness, but it was a good showing by Tanaka. It shows that he does have an aggressive side, that whenever if he gets put in trouble, he's going to tap into it. And like I said, he put himself into that pedestal to be, like I said, the guy in Japan, because like we mentioned before, when we talk about Japanese fighters, Katsuto Ioka and now Inoue have now started to make their bases outside of Japan. So he's put himself in the running for that, and that was a great fight. I'm glad you put the video up to it. And if you haven't caught it, folks, catch it. It's one of the better fights that you're going to see this year, and it'll probably last the test of time when we talk in December about fights of the year.
Yeah, I lost connection there. I'm sorry on my part. I'll go to you, Gail, to talk about these last two fights. All that with Tanaka and Taguchi, the Spence, Garcia, and that card took place Saturday. The night before, the DAZN card in Philadelphia, headlined by Tevin Farmer, current IBF champion at 130 pounds. Farmer has been fighting a lot. I think this is already his third title defense in less than a year span. Fought a guy by the name of Jono Carroll, who basically he talked his way into this fight by way of Twitter. Many thought that Farmer would have his way with Carroll. And yes, Farmer won, but in my opinion, Jono Carroll surprised, made Farmer work. He began the fight focusing exclusively on the body of Farmer. Farmer had to adjust. He did a really good job of it starting in round 3. Basically, instead of moving around boxing, he stayed in the pocket, pot shot it beautifully, countered beautifully, did enough to get the win. But again, Gail, give Jono Carroll credit here for the performance that he put on.
He put on a great performance. I would even call it a brave performance. I mean, the guy went for it. He, is sort of a, no risk, no reward attitude. And I wish more fighters had that attitude. Give it their best, go for broke, do what you can. He didn't prevail, but he certainly got a lot of folks' respect and wasn't particularly well known before this fight. So a very nice introduction. I mean, who wouldn't want to see him again? Who wouldn't enjoy hearing him in the lead up to the fight? And it wasn't pretty for Farmer. But in the end, he did what he needed to do. His accuracy and his precision, were tools that just, simply show why he was the better guy and got him past, kind of that crazy wild fight. Very entertaining to watch. And that's a good kind of a fight for a guy like Tevin Farmer to win, where it is a little bit of a rough ride, but prevails, perhaps learns a few tricks and tactics along the way, and it can only make him better and continue to make him better, should he get that shot that he wants so badly against Gervonta Davis. And more, I'm getting enthusiastic for that fight. It just intrigues me more and more as we go along. It's one of those cases where the build-up to the fight is building it in almost exactly the right way. I think that's a fight that's going to be one of these rare occasions where we get the right matchup at the right time. So many times we get a matchup we've all wanted to see, and, it's past its prime. That's not going to be the case this time, and I'm looking forward to that.
Well, let's hope the fight happens, because really, from what I understand, Hearn is going to make a substantial offer to Gervonta Davis. But the problem is Floyd. Floyd is not going to put Tank in there unless he really wants the fight happening. And from my vantage point, I don't see anything from Floyd that says he wants this fight to happen. Not anytime soon.
Well, Floyd is a terrific negotiator. And, of course, he's not going to play his hand. But if the price is right, if the money's right, if the deal's right, Floyd will do it. So one thing that makes me hopeful is that, in terms of business, Floyd and Eddie Hearn do speak the same language. So let's see if they can have that conversation and come to a meeting of the minds. Floyd will put Tank in there if the deal is right.
Last fight, and I'm going back to you, Gail. We talked Katie Taylor and her fight with Rose Volante and what could be put down the road for her potentially should she win. Going into the fight, previewing it, Gail, we both felt that Katie Taylor would be too much, and she showed herself to be exactly that, too much for her. But in the process, one, you gotta give Rose Volante for fighting the only way she could to have a chance to win. Let's come forward. But the thing is, Gail, because of how Volante fought, she brought out the best in Katie Taylor. Yeah, she was tough early, Volante, but Katie Taylor did, much like Tevin Farmer, did a beautiful job of adjusting. She went down to Volante's body. Fifth round was just absolutely gorgeous on her part, the way that she dissected Volante with body and head shots on the move. She stood there in the pocket. In short, Katie Taylor in this fight fought arguably the best fight of her career. Outstanding performance by Taylor.
This is the fight you want to show people who think they don't like women's boxing and say, well, table that thought, humor me, watch this fight. Katie Taylor's pure boxing skills are, in my opinion, at this point, unmatched by any other woman in the sport. She has power, she has technique, she's footwork, she's aggressive, she puts on an entertaining fight. She came awfully close to a knockout, actually, which can be very difficult for women. Volante was no pushover. She had an excellent record and was undefeated until this fight. That was her first defeat. And in doing so, Taylor kept her professional record undefeated. And, pardon me, she is one fight away from becoming undisputed women's lightweight champion. She took Volante's WBO belt and did stop her. And now she wants that last belt. And that last belt belongs to Delphine Persoon of Belgium, who's 35. She's held that belt for 5 years, and she is 43-1. She has a very impressive professional record. However, most of those fights have taken place in Belgium. So, when she comes up to this level, it's going to be hard to tell what happens. Pardon me, folks. And so it's going to be some tougher negotiations than I think we think because of the draw. A lot of people don't really know who Delphine Persoon is. Everybody would much rather see Taylor in some other big money fights, but that don't get her the unification. I think she's going to absolutely insist on this unification fight. I think it happens perhaps at home or at least in Europe. I don't think it's going to happen in the United States. Hopefully with the streaming platforms available to us, we'll at least get to see it. But once she has accomplished that, first of all, she'll only be the second woman after Cecilia Brakas ever to do so, which is a huge accomplishment. Then she's got some real leverage in trying to get some other super fights against some of the other names on the rise in the women's part of the sport. But she is the woman that can draw the general fight fan because she fights in a style they're used to seeing. I'll say it. She fights like a man. She fights like a man. She's been trained and watched men her entire career, and it shows. That's the kind of women's fighter we need out there in the ring. to grow the sport. And she's an appealing fighter outside of the ring. She's great with fans. She's a good talker. She knows the game publicity wise. So I think there's a lot in store for her. The one and only issue with Taylor is she stayed in the amateur ranks for a long time. So it's not like she's getting in there, in her early 20s like a Claressa Shields. She's, I believe, 32. So she says she's going to fight for another 6 or 7 years, but sometimes you don't get a choice. So we'll see what happens. I hope she makes the most of every minute of that career, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 2 years.
In the lead up to this fight, the word was that a possible fight between Taylor and Pearson could happen on the Joshua Big Baby Miller undercard. Let's hope in the aftermath that those rumors were indeed true, because if so, that's about as high as a profile you can get. A lot of folks will have the laptops tuned in to Joshua Miller, and I would have no problem putting that as the chief supporter or as the chief undercard bout of a fight between Miller and Joshua and Miller, because Taylor, she's rounding herself into be a terrific fighter and coming off of Claressa Shields and Christine Hammer, you would have essentially a second women's super fight in a matter of months. So that would be all to the good for women's boxing as well. Let's move on to some news here. News that popped today. Let me start with that. News that popped today. Going to you, Daniel. I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Last year, Alexander Usyk was to many the fighter of the year. He unified the cruiserweight titles. At the end of the year, many felt that he was consensus top 3, top 5 pound for pound fighter in the world. I know some folks who have him number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world. Friend of the show, Gus from Corruption and Boxing, I believe he has Usyk his number 1 fighter pound for pound in the world. Well, news is broke today that earlier this year, Usyk stated that he's going to move up to the heavyweight division, and news is breaking today that he has his first opponent in line. It looks like Usyk is going to make his heavyweight debut against Juan Carlos Takam. May 18th, it looks like it's going to be Chicago as the venue, aired live on DAZN. Your reaction to not just choice in terms of Usyk's heavyweight debut, but also the date.
Well, I kind of expected it. The move had to be forced because the WBA, in their quote-unquote infinite wisdom, ordered a couple of days ago, I think, ordered the negotiations between him and Dennis Ledebev. So that was the thing that forced Usyk's hand. I think Usyk was going to try to see if he can stay cruiserweight champion but still campaign at heavyweight. And ultimately, this decision had to be what had to happen. And Takam is it's a decent start when it comes to Usyk. He's good. He's serviceable. He's pretty skilled in the ring. And it's not something like another heavyweight that we're going to talk about later on today is going on right now. But it's a good fight. And we have to remember this. Supposedly the next fight after this is him and Povetkin. So that'll be an interesting thing indeed.
I think that's Gus from Corruption and Boxing. He's joined us. We're talking right now the announcement. I don't know if you heard, Gus, but it looks like I wrote about this, but looks like Usyk has made his decision. He's going to be making his heavyweight debut against Carlos Takam May 18th in Chicago. But I'm going to go back here and get your analysis on a fighter that you've talked about a lot. You're very impressed by Tanaka, Kosei Tanaka, and his win over Taguchi. If you were able to see the fight, your thoughts on this? When I look at Tanaka, the more I see him, the more I am impressed by him. Had this a little bit debate back and forth with the fellas from Three Kings Boxing. Can an argument be made that right now, Kosei Tanaka it is a very close, is not just a close second to Naoya Inoue as the best fighter in Japan. He may be the best.
Hey, Mike, Daniel, long time fellas. There's certainly a few fighters you can put in that category. You know, Hiroto Kiyoguchi, very impressive as well. Kenshiro, impressive. Even Ito, for a lack of amateur experience, also a very impressive fighter. But the top two, outside of Yoko, who's always been one of the best, if not. But Naoya and Tanaka, I think, is a different fighter, certainly from the other two. Different style, different sort of movement, but he's just moving up the weight categories a little bit too fast for me, Mike. Probably a combination of his body, the maturation, but also it's probably more his aspirations on, he set out a goal of becoming, I think it was a 4 or 5 weight world champion when I first started seeing him about 3 years back. So he's pursuing and trying to achieve that goal as soon as possible, as opposed to try and stay at one weight division for a little bit of time. And he did stay at flyweight for a bit of time, but he couldn't get, he was looking to fight Ryoichi back then, but he couldn't make the weight. I think he had an injury as well, so he moved up. So I guess it was unfinished business, Mike, that Ryoichi, having moved up, from junior flyweight to flyweight, so they could finally get that fight on, because it was supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be on the end of year, wasn't it, Mike? Last year when Taguchi, I think, held the unified belts and the ring belt. No. It was Milan, wasn't it? Milan Melendo stepped in, so it was just before the unification, wasn't it? If I recall.
Yes. And now with Kiraguchi at 108, it looks like there's talks of him fighting Shiro at the end of the year. And from what I'm understanding, Tanaka, this is going to be his last year at 112 at flyweights. And if Ioka beats Palikte for the vacant belt at 115, it's basically a guarantee that Tanaka will move up to 115 and fight Ioka in particular.
In one respect, Mike, we know that super flyweight is the glamorous division of now. Arguably, it's probably the most glamorous division in the lower weight categories, given what Roman Gonzalez had achieved with HBO and the recent fighters that have all moved to 115. So there's a considerable amount of money involved in that division, both from Japan and the United States. Golovkin's his promoter, was looking to take up the flyweight division as part of his own promotional company. So it's no doubt that he has aspirations of 115, but I don't know, Mike. I think in a way, I wouldn't say it's tarnishing his legacy because I'd like to see him at a division and try and unify, try and go for undisputed if he can. But I don't know. I certainly think he's good enough. 112, he can certainly do it there. It's a good division, but although the belts are distributed out, 115, there's a possibility that he can get lucrative fights in the United States as well. So it'll be a chance to showcase his skills on a much wider sort of canvas, and I think folks in the United States will appreciate him because he can fight. We saw with Taguchi that he chose to fight short range on the inside, did a good job. Taguchi was very aggressive early on, was landing that left hook, was certainly catching Tanaka, but he kept low, kept sort of changing levels. I felt he was timing his counter right hand, Mike, very well. He knew Taguchi was trying to come with that lead left hand. So as soon as he fired the lead, he would come over on top with that sort of right hand, and he would loop it as well. And it was catching Ryoichi. So yeah, I thought he was certainly the second half of the fight. I think he was dominating. Taguchi looked a little bit worn out as well, and we know he's a very well seasoned, conditioned fighter who can go 12 rounds. But I think Tanaka's punches, his punch power is definitely carrying up, and I think the extra sort of mustard in his punches was what was definitely depleting Taguchi and his energy, and he wasn't going to be pushed back. I think Taguchi was trying to push him back, get a little bit of space. So apart from one round where Tanaka took a little bit of punishment, I think it was the third or the fourth, he got a little bit stunned up, but it was nothing significant. Pretty dominant second half of the fight. And I thought overall, Mike, I thought it was probably one of the better fights. At least it was a competitive fight.
Quick word on Usyk fighting Takam. Not just the fact that he's his choice of opponent, but as I asked Daniel, the date in which he's making his heavyweight debut as well.
Didn't realise the fight had been made. So yeah, from my tentative sort of following the news, I think Usyk wanted to fight Povetkin outright, Mike. That was what was negotiated, but I think Alexander, Povetkin, I think he wanted a tune-up fight first of all before fighting, Usyk. So I guess if the two of them are going to be fighting possibly on the same card, I'm not sure who Povetkin will be fighting. I think they're going to try and build that fight, so I don't think it's a case of any fighter ducking or whatever else. I think Usyk is confident he'll go straight into the fight, but if it's Carlos to come first, tough opponent, comes in fantastic shape, good tough opponent, but he's probably he's certainly been worn down, been knocked out. I think Usyk would probably be better staying away from mid-range, short range. Khan can be very aggressive, can use his head as well. So he can risk getting head-butted, broken nose, cut. If he outboxes him, which I think he can, height and reach ain't going to be a problem for him. I think the Khan is, I'm not sure what his reach is, but he's about the same height, no? 6'3", something like that, both of them.
Yeah. Usyk maybe an inch or two taller, actually.
Okay. Yeah, Carlos might be about a 186 or something. I think it's a decent enough fight, Mike. I've got no problems with Carlos Takam. He could have picked somebody far worse as his inaugural fight, but he's a guy he campaigned at super heavyweight in 2008 Olympics, so he's moved up and down the weight so much. He's beaten so many heavyweights, World Series of Boxing as well, Mike. He's fought Junior Fars, he's fought the Joe Joyces, so he's sparred and he's actually beaten up and dominated what Vladimir Klitschko even admitted in sparring as well. So I can't see any problems acclimating to heavyweight. So no problem with the fight. Look forward to it.
I'll go to you, Gail, quickly. Thoughts on Usyk, his choice of opponent, as well as the date for his heavyweight debut.
Don't hate it. It's a name most people know. It'll give us a good point of comparison. I'm not too worried about Usyk moving up. He needs to reacclimate to the division, but it's not foreign territory to him. And the guy is just so immensely talented. Look forward to seeing him compete in that division. I mean, the only question we have, he can take out, I'm pretty sure, 3/4 of the guys he could choose as opponents. It's only those few elite right up at the top that are going to be the question mark. And he doesn't seem to have any fear of getting right in there and mixing it up with those guys. So I welcome him to the heavyweight division.
The reason I keep harping on this, and I'll go back to you, Daniel, if you're still around, keep harping on the date because earlier this week, I think Tuesday or Wednesday this week, Deontay Wilder had this press conference, this big announcement, his future and all of this and that in light of him turning down the $100 million reportedly from $100 million offer from DAZN. Well, you had the announcement. You thought it was going to be something big, Daniel, but the announcement is what insiders and us folks who cover boxing on a regular basis already knew, and that he was going to fight Brazil. The date being May 18th, also the same date as Usyk and Takam. So you're going to have Showtime and DAZN competing. What did you get, Daniel, from that presser from Wilder, the announcement? To me, I just have to say, I got nothing. He's going to fight. He was going to fight Brazil. And water is wet. Tell me something we didn't already know.
Oh, there's so much to digest in this. Like last night, I kind of went into it on my pod that's up on SoundCloud right now. But it's this whole thing. Remember, it started 2 weeks. It's like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, when the reports started coming out that Wilder and his team were negotiating with DAZN over that 3-fight $100 million contract. And the way that story changed within the span of a few hours, like first a report came out, then another report comes out saying the Joshua fight's included. Then another report says no, it's for 3 other fights, and then he could negotiate with Joshua. And the consensus seems to be that DAZN offered the Joshua fight, but Joshua's team didn't. Well, Joshua's team and then in reality Eddie Hearn didn't really sign off on their end. So Wilder was pretty much left little choice but to fight Brazil because, we'll leave Tyson Fury for later on in the show, but this was expected. Like they were gonna call it as mandatory, so nobody suspected. I think what people are probably surprised by, and I draw a parallel to this in the NBA to how the Jimmy Butler situation was handled in a way when reports came out that the Houston Rockets offered 4 first-round draft picks to get Jimmy Butler from the Minnesota Timberwolves. If it's purely money, I would have went for it. If it was purely money, I would have went for it because that's $100 million, just $33 million a fight. You are just after those 3 fights, you're set for life. The problem, though, is, and there's a couple of things happening here. I'll ask all you guys, do we remember what we thought when we heard that Luis Ortiz signed with Matchroom initially?
There was an argument that they signed him in order to protect Joshua.
Yes, most of us insiders know. What did you think the casual fan thought when they heard Luis Ortiz, WBA mandatory to Joshua, just signed with Matchroom?
That potential Ortiz-Joshua fight.
Exactly. And we both knew within the second fight that Luis Ortiz was facing, I think it was against David Allen, that the first premise was correct, that it almost felt like Eddie Hearn did sign Luis Ortiz to make sure that he didn't have to enforce his mandatory against Joshua. Maybe Deontay's team saw that, and they remembered it and said, if you're not going to guarantee, if we can't get any word in that it's the Joshua is guaranteed or that his team is guaranteed the end of it, why should we sign? But if you listen to like some of the interviews also, Mike, of how the other was talking, not in the press conferences, but in interviews before and afterwards, when it came into it, supposedly Al Heyman got into his ear and said that $33 million is just training camp money to Floyd. And then Wilder came out afterwards when he said that he was staying with Showtime. It's like, I'm with the team that made Floyd, so why should I go anywhere?
Your thoughts? Go ahead, Daniel. I thought you was finished.
No. I just got to let this out when it comes to Al Heyman. Like, one thing that he's done, particularly to his black fighters, unfortunately, is he sold them on the idea that he created Floyd. And if he created Floyd, he can make them the same amount of money too. And I'll give him credit, like, he prevented Floyd from not becoming broke. But let's be honest, he didn't make Floyd.
Floyd made himself more than anything. Floyd made himself. Started with Aaron, but ultimately Floyd made himself because of how he bought himself out from Aaron's contract and became his own man business-wise. I'll go to you, Gail, Daniel, your reaction to that press conference, which to me, again, that was a whole lot of nothing other than what we already knew. First you, Gail, and then quickly you, Gus.
He confirmed news that was, expected, but still at, frankly, rumor stage until somebody says it out of their own mouth. Could it have been done in a news release? Yeah, probably could have, but then the video guys wouldn't, get their pictures in their interviews. I don't hate it. We know there's some history between these guys, so the lead up should be interesting. I hope it's at least a competitive fight. Now, as for Wilder's decision, a lot of the stories we've heard were once again people reporting rumors. People should not be reporting rumors or what they heard might go down. Rumors shouldn't be reported until rumors become facts. But that's what journalists do. Guys who run clickbait YouTube channels, they can speculate all they want. As long as they label it that way, they're free to do that. Absolutely. Here's what I look at when I see this. Wilder is a free agent, and freedom is a very, very, very nice thing. Did Wilder trade freedom? Did Wilder trade some money, potential money, to stay in control of his fate? I think so. These fights can all still go down, but this way they're going to be determined one at a time. And Wilder, to me, is betting on himself here, that he's going to do well and continue to get better and better and better offers. And I say good for him.
Your reaction, Gus. Are you there, Gus? Can't get to Gus right now. Can't get to Gus right now. Let's move on right quick to another
Can
news
you hear?
story. Go ahead, Gus. Now we got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Somebody's going to have to give me a quick overview of what exactly he rejected, Mike, because I have not been following events at all.
You can add in on this one, Daniel, but the word is that Wilder was offered a deal anywhere from $100 to $120 million, 3-fight deal. From what I've heard and read, the first fight was going to be actually a fight with Brazil, followed up by 2 subsequent fights with Joshua. That's the gist of it. I've also heard that those Joshua fights were not guaranteed. Who knows? A lot of people see that $100 million figure dangled in and about, and they just don't get why Wilder would turn that down. Any more to add on that?
Yeah, it's something that I did want to add into the whole thinking about it. Good thing that Gus is listening to us. It's first, like I said, the consensus looks to be from all the reports is that DAZN offered that deal between $100 and $120 million.
Has that been verified? Have they actually?
It looks like both Wilder's team and DAZN have in a way confirmed it.
Okay.
But the consensus looks to be that DAZN offered this money and they offered 2 of those fights to be 2 fights with Anthony Joshua, but it looks like Joshua's team, aka Eddie Hearn, didn't sign off on their end.
You know, Daniel. From what you've said, I mean, I'm a little bit skeptical for 2 reasons. Number one, Joshua is not a DAZN fighter, so from what what it is, people have been sending me messages and snippets of videos begging me to make a video, but I've been so disconnected. But from the tentative bit about information that I've just perused, I was surprised that Eddie Hearn wasn't a party to the negotiations because Joshua doesn't have a contract with DAZN. It's a fight by fight basis. So therefore, technically, he's not their fighter for them to propose to Wilder without Eddie Hearn being there. So number one, I'm surprised at that. The other aspect which surprised me, what I noticed was that details regarding the initial offer was already leaked to Lance Pugmire and to the editor of Bad Left Hook before Deontay Wilder had even sat down with DAZN in New York. So when I saw that, I thought maybe the DAZN have deliberately spread the rumors on Wilder, rejecting the offer before he had even sat down and negotiated with them. Because how on earth did Bad Left Hook and Ring Magazine, etc., how did they know about the issues of the contract when at that stage they were not disclosed and Eddie Hearn was not even a party to the negotiation? So I just find the whole element very strange. But in looking at DAZN a little bit more, I'm a little bit skeptical about some of the deals in which they've structured and released. I did a video before saying that I don't believe Alvarez's deal is to that extent, of that sort of magnitude of $33 million, because they're too far leveraged. I've had a look at their company financials and their structure, they're so badly leveraged at the moment around the world. I don't believe that these deals are to that sort of capacity. How on earth is Alvarez and Rocky Fielding going to generate profit of more than what I calculated about $7 million if they're offering Alvarez $33 million for the fight? They're taking a deficit of over around $28 million. So number one, I'm very skeptical about the amounts that have been proposed. I don't believe them. Number two, and this is probably more important, I think the fight is a $200 million fight, and I think Deontay Wilder has almost gauged that. So if they're offering him $40 million, he's probably thinking there's got to be a hell of a lot of more money at the table. I think potentially both of Joshua and Wilder, if they've been rejecting a lot of these deals, they probably realize that it's $100 million each fight, and I think that's what they're waiting for. I think you can definitely do 1 million pay-per-views in America, whatever, at $79. And with all of the other franchise and networks, I think it's definitely a $200 million fight. And that's probably the reason why they've rejected the offers, Mike, because what's 40, 50 million if they know that they can get a hell of a lot more? So, and now that Wilder is, he's had, from my understanding, he's had a lot of offers from the other television networks. So he's in a prime position to negotiate. So he can clearly go back to Showtime and say, look, ESPN have offered me this, DAZN have offered me that. Can you guys at least match the offer, or if not better? Because I'd rather stay with you guys. So credit to him, he's in a great position.
And this brings up a good point, actually. And guys, I know you mentioned before that you watch wrestling. Did you watch this week's Monday Night Raw?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm surprised you didn't pick up on this. Now, Monday, the WWE is probably as micromanaged a product that you can find in wrestling, from everything from the lighting to the announcers. And this is key because to me in this conversation. There was a match this week on Raw between Ronda Rousey and one of the other wrestlers named Dana Brooke, and they were talking about how Dana Brooke was doing things. And interesting enough, one of the commentators, Corey Graves, fed a line, and he's one of the guys that Vince McMahon directly tells him to, talking about Dana Brooke's brave. I give her bravery, but you don't see me trying to get tough with Deontay Wilder.
Yeah.
Think about that. WWE, the most micromanaged wrestling company in the world, knows who Deontay Wilder is. Oh, and on yesterday, you had ESPN come out their fame graphic, with the 100, they graded athletes' fame based on money, Google searches. There's 6 boxers on that list. You would think that somebody probably like Floyd and Manny would be number 1. Deontay Wilder is number 1, and Tyson Fury second, as far as among boxers. So he is in a position of real power. He's the most relevant. If you look at that metric, he's the most relevant fighter in the U.S. right now, and possibly in the greater Western world. So I completely agree. He sees the money, but I also think, like we mentioned this deal, if you can't guarantee Joshua, who DAZN are only offering because they feel like if Joshua's Matchroom, he'll automatically still fight for them. Like I said, I get why he did it. I get why he turned down the deal but then it also explains why DAZN now is raising the prices for their subscription. They're offering now an annual membership of $99 for a year. If you sign up and you're new, it now becomes, starting on Monday, $19.99 a month. But if you already signed up, you still stay in that price. You're grandfathered to a year for the $9.99, and then it goes up to $19.99.
Yeah, let's go into that right quick. You just mentioned it, Daniel. Your reaction to the fact that DAZN, given your issues that you have with how that streaming service has operated, your thoughts on the fact that they're offering up this new pricing for those who are just like one-time followers versus those who want to be long-time subscribers of DAZN.
Well, I'll say this: DAZN does offer more than boxing. Like, they do offer Bellator, they do offer, I think, Bundesliga here in the U.S. So they do offer a good amount of product. The problem is, and Gus eloquently put it in when it came to looking at the financials, they supposedly backed up the Brinks truck for Canelo Alvarez. You supposedly backed up the Brinks truck to Danny Jacobs in a way. You supposedly backed up the Brinks truck to Gennady Golovkin. And you were willing to back up a Brinks truck to Deontay Wilder. That's a whole lot of money that you are tying yourself in within the span of 6 months of you launching this thing. Because DAZN and boxing launched in October. So it kind of does show they may be burning through money. And I know our good friend Jacob Rivera doesn't think that it'll lead to it, but yeah, it's probably going to lead to, we're probably going to have at least now 2 DAZN pay-per-view cards this year, because they need to make up the money somehow. If you are offering fighters this much money, and you may have to actually live it up to the contract. This isn't like the NFL where, yeah, you can sign the $70 million contract and then only 20 of it's guaranteed. There's enough people. There's enough people in boxing to make sure that it can be fully guaranteed.
Your reaction to the news, Gus, with DAZN?
Mike. I did a rough sort of reverse financial model. Just looking at their markets around the world, and especially the United States, and thinking at how many subscribers are they going to need to try and offset, the capital injections in which they've had with all of these fighters, and how long is it going to take roughly? So it's one of those sort of decay algorithm sort of calculations that you do, and from what I can see, that they've not even reached. They've probably got about 600,000-700,000. That's just speculation, but that's the number of subscriptions which they probably have in the US. I don't think it's more than 1 million at the moment. So it's going to take, Mike. It's going to take. They're going to need at least, if they grow at 500,000 a year. It's going to take over. It's going to take over 6 years before they start recouping any money. And we know they're a long-term model, because the deals that they've negotiated in Japan especially have been sort of 10, 11-year deals. So I think their financial model is that, because they've been taking rights away from domestic broadcasters and putting it on an application, and that transition from a 20-30 million audience from television to a streaming application is going to take considerable time, but it's going to have to be quality product if that transition is going to take place, or it's going to meet their financial model. But in the States, without major pay-per-view, Mike, they're going to need at least 3.2 million subscriptions by the end of year 2 for them to not be exposed to the extent of having a leverage position of around 1/40, which is quite massive. So it's precarious, but they've got the investors to do it. Now their structure is quite different. It's not a company in which the allocation of funds is specifically from their ultimate beneficial owner in the United States, Access. They've got 16 investors who are supporting DAZN, both from Austria, Switzerland, Germany, as well as the United States. And their expansion is also going to take place at some point in the United Kingdom, which I think that's what they're currently ironing out at the moment. So they are very aggressive. They seem to know what they're doing, but they have made catastrophic errors in the past and huge financial losses. Their UBO has tried to purchase, a few companies in the past, and they haven't worked out, and they've had massive losses. So it's not a guarantee that they're going to succeed. It's a very difficult market to penetrate the United States. Up against networks that have been there for many, many years. They haven't really managed to sign the sort of marquee fighters which they wanted. Hence why DAZN have had to bring on board a lot of secondary and third party promoters to try and do the heavy lifting for what Matchroom didn't. So now Matchroom are facing obviously problems with, they've got a slight conflict between what they're doing in the United States and the UK, because they're taking a lot of their domestic fighters, they've taken to the United States, and that's meant that a lot of the cards in the UK have become significantly weaker, and that has displeased, the bosses at Sky Sports, sort of behind closed doors. So even Eddie Hearn is facing the pressure, and that's the reason why I think he was definitely insistent on Joshua fighting in the United States more, to try and generate the subscriptions, as opposed to having that massive fight in Wembley. And they could have picked any opponent for that, and they could have filled it out, but the pressure was on in the States. So precarious time at the moment, Mike. I think.
Let's move on to another news story that broke today. We all know about Tyson Fury and the deal he signed with ESPN Top Rank. It was anticipated that he was going to fight Wilder in an immediate rematch. That's not going to be the case. Well, word is dropping today. I don't know if you heard about this, Gus, that Fury is going to fight a German prospect by the name of Tom Schwartz, June 15. Fight will be in the U.S. at a location to be determined. Top Rank, the Thomas and Mack Center in Vegas is. I know that venue has been put on hold, so it may happen there. Your reaction to the decision that Fury has made now that he is not going to fight Wilder in a rematch? Your thoughts, Gus?
The deal, Mike. I thought the deal was. I don't think it was beneficial in terms of. I was very surprised with the deal, Mike. I know little about the deal. The details have been very vague, so I don't know exactly what on earth has he signed. What was guaranteed, etc. There seems to be a lot of uncertainty. I'm not even sure if Tyson knows exactly what he's signed.
Yeah. That's why I was thinking. I thought it was just me. It was just me. I was like, okay, he signed this deal. There was this announcement, but you haven't heard many details. You just heard that going to possibly fight Wilder. It didn't happen. So I go back to you, Gus, and you can follow up, Daniel.
Yeah.
Did Fury really know what he was getting into with this deal?
This is it, Mike. MTK, who are based in Marbella, is like his promotional company, who are very active in boxing. From what I heard, they've been doing they've been dealing with Bob Arum and Top Rank specifically. But I think the amounts of monies involved, I'm not sure whether they're feasible, Mike. And number two, it may be a possibility that those monies are only going to be available if it is a fight against Wilder. If it's any other opponent, then I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown is, or whether he has a minimum guarantee, or I've got no idea on the financials. I'm a contracts man. It's something I would love to have a little look at if that information was available. So to me, Mike, it's very much overcomplicated the matter. I think it was almost a little bit of arrogance from ESPN Top Rank, thinking that if they sign Fury and then made a subsequent offer to Wilder, then he would agree to the fight, and that fight would be contested. I don't know how they would split the networks between ESPN and Showtime, but as an outsider from the outset, Mike, I couldn't understand the deal, and I felt it wasn't beneficial to making any of the fights. Fury, for all of his rhetoric about not being interested in money, suddenly he seems very interested in money. I understand his predicament to a certain extent, that, yes, he may have had a bad decision in the first fight. So whether he's trying to insulate himself to avoid a replication of what happened, thinking that if he controls the events, he dictates the fight, he's the A-sider, that maybe that somehow would result in a fair and unbiased decision. I don't know. Maybe that was part of his mindset as well. But the same situation with the welterweights, Mike, with ESPN and the PBC controlling it. I'm not sure whether they can reconcile between the networks and get these fights on, Mike. I think it's now become a little bit more troublesome.
Your reaction to the breaking news that took place earlier today regarding Fury, Daniel, and this guy by the name of Schwartz, who I must admit I don't know much about.
Oh, okay. First, Gus, Mike, you're kind of right. Yeah, Fury got put into a situation where he just saw a contract, he saw big numbers of it, and he signed. But the problem is, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, the way I think the deal is structured, he only gets the big money if he fights a top 3 level heavyweight or Wilder. Otherwise, he's not gonna get that much money part of the deal. So yeah, Fury signed something he did not read. Fury signed something he really did not understand. And when it comes to this situation, now I want to get into a little bit deeper in this, and because actually yesterday, like I said, I remember I did my pod yesterday with Joe Francis. And we were talking about Fury possibly facing Brian Jennings as the first opponent. And we were disappointed at that. Because we were talking about Jennings. Oh, he just suffered a knockout loss. Why not fight the guy that knocked him out, Oscar Rivas? Because now that knockout got Oscar Rivas ranked in the top 10 of all 4 sanctioning bodies. Didn't happen. I'm surprised they didn't try to even go with somebody like Andy Ruiz, who is a serviceable heavyweight. It's pretty telling now because Fury and Wilder are both in these 2 islands that they put themselves in, where the most lucrative fight, if it's not Anthony Joshua, is with each other. But because Fury signed something that he clearly did not understand, it's a lot harder to make because for all intents and purposes, yeah, ESPN can throw money around, but let's face it, the people that are much like how a lot of what the DAZN runs through Matchroom, but it's getting increased more by Golden Boy. A lot of what ESPN does is run through Bob Arum or Frank Warren when it comes to boxing. So in a way, Top Rank is the one that's doing the negotiations more than ESPN does. So I don't know if it was Bob, just the whole, unfortunately, the situation would always with Bob when you put Bob Arum and Al Heyman in a room where they will not do business with each other unless they absolutely have to. I don't know if it's that situation or just the mere fact that Fury, like I said, Fury just didn't just sign something he didn't really understand. Now, think about this. This guy still technically has the lineal championship of the world. He is still the man who beat the man in a way in the heavyweight division. And you have this guy, granted, yes, his road back was a little topsy-turvy, but he proved himself in the Wilder fight. And now you have him fighting a prospect who we don't even know is even European level? Come on. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. It really should have been Oscar Rivas.
Yeah. It should have been like the guy's ranked in the top 10 in the heavyweight. And it's a good fight for Fury to have because it's almost a similar style in the way to Wilder, where the guy is a little bit skilled, but Fury could probably box circles around him. But he showed that he has a punch in the end. So it's just it's baffling to now see Tyson Fury be put into this space, because I literally thought that when he signed this deal, you can't fight any more Seferis.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's going to fight another Seferi.
Last question, Gus, before we start to shut things down. We talked about Fury. Did Frank Warren get duped as well?
I'm not sure, Mike, but from what I've seen with Frank, he doesn't seem too happy about this deal. Some of the questions that were posed to him, he seemed very uncomfortable in the interviews. Although he does have a very long-standing relationship with Top Rank, I felt he certainly didn't want Fury signing another co-promotional deal. And this is very strange with Tyson. He's still got problems with Mick Hennessy. I think Mick did a hell of a lot for him, especially when he was going through the problems with the British Boxing Board of Control. He was at all of the hearings with them, sometimes on his own, and Tyson left him to join Frank, and now it could be a case of, Frank as well. Maybe Tyson feels that, the options are exhausted with him domestically and that the fight's all in the United States. So, Frank has got, we know, Mike, Frank has got problems with Frank has got major financial problems. The revenues and customs have given him a writ, and he's filed for bankruptcy. So he's got problems with Box Nation as well. It looks like MTK Global have pretty much taken that over. So Rainham's still one of his investors who launched it. They're no longer investing in it. So all of Frankie fighters have moved to BT. There's absolutely nothing on Box Nation. It's only international fights, but I'm not even sure who's paying for them. So he's in the precarious position as well, Mike. So, but I don't know, Mike. I from what I've seen, he doesn't certainly seem overjoyed with this deal.
Indeed. I think we're going to start to shut the show down on that note. Gail, she had to dip out. She had to leave early. So for those who want to talk boxing or anything else with her, you can follow her on Twitter, PR Pro San Diego. That's PR Pro San Diego on Twitter. You can also check out her work on Communities Digital News. That's COM Digi News.com. That's again COM COMM, Digi DIGI News.com. I'll go to you guys for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk music. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Looking to get back into boxing a little bit more. I'm trying to invest in some some new equipment so I can do video editing properly, because there's a lot of content that I want to do, film analysis, etc. So, because I get the channel has been pretty dormant recently, but I get a hell of a lot of messages from people asking me to make videos on this and this. So as tiny as I am out there, people I think appreciate my analytical skills. So I'm going to try and get into it a little bit more, start doing some proper videos. So hopefully next couple of weeks, I've just got some software now, so I'm sitting down trying to learn it. So videos will be up and running on corruption in boxing on YouTube.
Indeed. And last but certainly not least, Daniel from the Inscriber, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter at Vaucus99. And like I said, the show that is up, we have it up now on 4boxings.com and on SoundCloud. We just did a show, me, Joe, and Francis this week. We talked about last week's fights, and definitely catch us on here. Catch us on the Inscribers magazine as well. Like I said, we're expanding to do lifestyle, do sneakers. Definitely check it out, and definitely join next week because we have a little bit of a lull, unfortunately, this weekend. But April is going to be it's looking to be very fun.
Indeed. First off, this will be on YouTube, and for those who are listening on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Also subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud as well. Google Hangout, get your act right. I'll just say that we had to record this on Skype. Google, get your act right. Want to thank, on a secondary note, Bo Bland from Three Kings Boxing. Going to put up an interview with a local prospect out of my area, fellas. Young junior welterweight prospect by the name of Michael Williams Jr. He's currently being trained by Roy Jones Jr. Did an interview with him. So look for that coming soon. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and whatnot with me, you know what it is on Twitter. Brother JR at Brother JR76, as I said to begin the show. If you want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, P4P Boxing Report, .wordpress.com. Check the Rather blog page. You'll find links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us on all available platforms that carry podcasts. And Gus, we are on Spotify now, so if you look on Spotify, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, you will see all previous episodes of Pound for Pound Boxing Report on Spotify. Also, let donation be the best nations. Most things are not free, including the production of this joint. So, got a Cash Me and a PayPal account. Want to hit those links, whatever you can. Again, $5, $10, $1, 50 cents. So if you want to up it up, if you got the bag like that, whatever you can whatever you can give, please shoot a little bit of coin to Pound for Pound Box Report. On the next episode, we didn't do previews of this fight, but I'm going to do a recap of, we'll probably do a recap, I should say, of Charlie Edwards, who won the flyweight title WBC version over Christopher Rosales in what many consider an upset. He's going to make his first defense against Angel Moreno this weekend in the UK. In the UK, I can't remember where. I think Olympic Park over in England. On the undercard of that, one of my favorite prospects in all of boxing, Joshua Buatsi. He's going to be fighting for the British light heavyweight title. I know Anthony Yarde gets all the publicity, or most of the publicity, but I think Buatsi is the best prospect in England, one of the best, I'll say. And I think he would just, if Buatsi and Yarde were to fight, I'd pick Buatsi to beat him all day. And we would do,
Anthony Yarde said is that he's the A side against Kovalev. Can you believe that?
He's delusional.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Yes, look, I saw that. And I was hoping to avoid it, but No, I just gotta be blunt, motherfucker. You're not the champion. You're the damn challenger.
Look, man. In general, I don't have no issues with Yard, but he needs to stop being so wishy-washy about that prospect with Kovalev. After his last fight, when he was asked directly about the fight, he said, "Yeah, I take it, but that's what I got managers and promoters for." And then he started giving scenarios of why they're protecting him. And let's face it, we all know that he had an offer to fight for a world title at the end of last year against, I want to say, Benavidez, and he turned it down. And if Kovalev was to come at his camp for an offer to fight him tomorrow, he would turn it down. So, all this A-side, miss me with that, sir. Miss me with that. So, yeah, going to preview Edwards, going to recap Edwards and Moreno. We'll probably recap Buatsi. He's fighting Leah Conroy for the vacant British light heavyweight title. And we will do a preview of, I want to say Gvozdyk. Yeah, Gvozdyk. He is going to be fighting on the 30th on ESPN, fighting a fighter by the name of Ngombo. Ngombo. So he's going to be making the first defense of his light heavyweight title in Philly. First fight since that kind of ill-fated fight against Adonis Stevenson, and thoughts and prayers to Adonis Stevenson, who is in recovery. So yeah, for Gail from Communities Digital News, Gus from Corruption and Boxing, Daniel from the Subscriber, I'm your host Michael. This has been Trying, episode 245 of Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Ooh,